Hello, welcome everybody. Sarah Beeson is currently serving her second term as a school board member for Alpine School District. She serves the communities of American Fork, Cedar Hills, Alpine, and lastly Highland. She and her husband, Sam, have lived in American Fork for 20 years, and they have 5 children and 6 grandchildren. Thank you, Sarah Beeson, for coming tonight, and the time is yours.
Thank you so much, Rick, for that introduction. It's great to be here in Highland this evening, and a pleasure to be here with the candidates, and we welcome you. And how wonderful it is that Highland City knew exactly how many chairs to put out this evening. You guys must have a wonderful reputation of being here and supporting and getting involved. That's wonderful. Welcome to tonight's debate. I just have some housekeeping items that I want to go ahead and share with our candidates. Tonight's format will go as follows. Each candidate will have a minute and a half to introduce themselves, starting with candidate 1, and then it will follow with candidate 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and after the introductions, the first question will be asked to candidate 2, and then it will be followed by candidate 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1. And so this pattern will continue until we get to the conclusion, which will start with candidate 6, and then we'll go ahead and go backwards. I probably should make the audience aware that this evening we have online with us John LaFront, who is not here, but he will be joining us through Zoom, and he will be the first candidate. I want to go ahead and start with this minute and a half to give you all an opportunity to introduce yourselves to our audience, and we'll go ahead and start. John, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay, yep, we can. We'll go ahead and start with you, John, give you a minute and a half to introduce yourself.
Wonderful. Well, I wish I could be there in person, but I'm so grateful we have technology that I can come via Zoom. But to introduce myself, I am John LaFront. I'm a writer candidate for City Council and a current council member. I'm a father of 4 and I'm a resident for 3 years. But I've been in the area for a long time. I think I'm a job. I am an entrepreneur and have built several successful businesses in the healthcare space. So I work with homes and cemeteries and even hospice providers. I was lucky enough to receive the 40 award last year. I got my undergraduate degree from Brigham University in advertising and marketing, and my master's in real estate development from the University of Utah, but I am a recruiter. I've had a lot of my time on City Council so far. I've been here filling out the remainder of Tim Hall's term, but a lot of my association with Mayor Rossler and the other council members, they've been so kind and gracious to me, helping get me up to speed on all things within the city. And I have a lot of my time being able to spend with the rest of the city staff as well, to be able to go around to public works with Andy and his team, to meet with our city admin, our finance director, city recorder, librarian, police chief, fire chief, and diving all the time. I am here. The reason why I'm running is for the future of Highland. I grew up in a small town. I know what it's like to see change. And it can be hard. There are a lot of wonderful people who move in, and I decided to represent both groups. Looking forward to the conversation tonight.
Thank you, John. Wesley.
Hi, I'm Wesley Warren. I am usually on this side of the desk. I'm a fixture at this
room. Thank you, Kim. Obviously, my first time on this side of the desk, but I've seen this mistake done a lot. Yeah, I've been involved in city politics for several years here in Highland, coming to just about every city council meeting, as many planning commission meetings as I can. And I've just always really loved being a part of the city. I currently serve on the library board, and I have for a couple years. I co-chair the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee with Brian Braithwaite. And I've been really involved the last couple years with almost everyone here, actually, the Mountain Ridge Park fundraising and planning and raising awareness. And I just love being involved. That's really my only ambition in running for city council, is just to make this place better. I'm already talking with friends and residents all the time about city issues and happenings and goings-on. and I already come to all the meetings. I feel like I have the knowledge, and the last step is just to move a few yards this way and look this direction. So I appreciate such an awesome turnout and look forward to this evening.
Thank you. Kim?
Okay. My name is Kim Rodella. I've lived in Highland City for about 13 years. Our family moved here, probably a lot of reasons why you guys moved here: the open space, low density housing, the trails, the parks, the community, and just the feel of Highland. And so we really enjoyed raising our family here. Just a little background about myself. I currently am a city council member. I've been on the council for the past 4 years. I kind of was tapped by the former Mayor Rodman and then Representative Brady Brammer to run, just based off of my background and experience. I have a master's in public administration with an emphasis in public finance, bachelor's in journalism. I used to be a budget analyst for Governor Herbert and Governor Huntsman, so I was over about a $200 million budget, and my job was essentially research and present recommendations to the governor of what type of budget he wanted to present. Currently, I'm a fiscal grants manager under Governor Cox, and what I do is I research out a lot of grant opportunities for our cities and counties, and then I also follow legislation and how it affects our cities and counties fiscally and policy-wise, and then report back to the governor on that. Greatest experience is I'm a mom of 4 kids, and this is why I do it. I want to be able to raise my family in a great place, and I want them to be able to raise their families here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Liz?
Thank you. I appreciate you guys being, I'll turn this on. I appreciate you guys being here tonight, and I appreciate those who are tuning in on YouTube as well. But my name is Liz Rice, and I am your write-in candidate for Highland City Council. I'm a mother of 4 grown sons and 10 grandchildren. I taught in Alpine School District for 33 years. I received my bachelor's from BYU in communications, speech, theater arts, and United States history. I also received my master's in educational leadership from BYU. I retired in 2017. I have lived here for 25 wonderful years. I've lived in Utah for about 50 years, and my ancestors settled Utah in 1847. I have served on Highlands Planning Commission and several other committees over the years, including the parks and others. I recently helped write the helicopter ordinance for Highland. I enjoy living in Highland and commit to doing all I can to keep Highland a safe, beautiful bedroom community that we have established and that I moved here for. As a retired school teacher, I have the time and dedication it takes to serve as a city council member, and I would appreciate your vote. I want to keep Highland, Highland. Thanks.
We'll go ahead with Doug.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everybody for joining us this evening. When I settled in Highland 7 years ago, I fell in love with our city. Love all the people that I met. I love the majestic vistas. I love the open space that we enjoy. And I love the opportunity for civic and community involvement. When I was on the library board, we updated the bylaws, and I successfully pushed to create both a board calendar and a policy manual for the board, setting us up to do even better and be more successful in the future. In 2021 and 2022, as the staging area coordinator for the parade, I improved the signage and improved the messaging that we did to our residents. This year, as chair of the parade, I introduced a cleanup crew and reintroduced an announcer to the parade. When I get involved with a group, I work with my colleagues to make things better. And I'm asking you this evening for the opportunity and the privilege to do that for the entire city of Highland as a member of our city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Brittany.
Hey everybody, my name is Brittany Bills. I've lived here in Highland for almost 17 years. I've got 5 great kids, ages 11 to 23, that I've raised here, and couldn't think of a better place to raise my family. A little bit about me. I've been on the City Council for the last 4 years, and I was on the Planning Commission before that. Prior to that, I was really involved in kids' school and doing those kinds of things. I've got a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in public policy analysis, and I'm currently working full-time for a software company, and then I teach on the side for fun. I wanted to say thank you to city staff for taking the time to set this up and to be here. It's a lot of extra time for all of you, and I really appreciate it. And thank you to Sarah. I know that school board itself is a full-time job, so thank you for coming. And mostly just thank you all for coming, or those of you who are watching. I'm running for city council because I think that local government matters. I think it's the thing that affects our families and our homes and our kids and our safety. And that's why I'm here running, and I know that that's why you're here and interested in the city events also. So I look forward to a really great conversation tonight and hopefully talking to more of you again later. Thanks.
Thank you. Wonderful candidates. Well, let's get down to business and ask some questions. Just for your information, that the questions tonight have been formulated by the public previously online. We'll go ahead and start with Wesley and work our way down. The first question tonight is, the state legislature and governor's office have recently become more involved in local land use matters as related to affordable housing and approval processes. What are your thoughts on these changes, and how would you work with our state representatives on these matters? Wesley.
Thanks, Sarah. It's been interesting over the last few years to observe these mandates being handed down by the state, because not all cities look and function the same. I think it's important for Highland to make accommodations for all of the different kinds of life situations that we find ourselves in where we need affordable housing or a more dense form of housing. And I think that solution is going to look different in Highland than it looks in a lot of the surrounding cities. I remember during the really amazing council discussions over this matter, there are several angles that the state has allowed cities to approach the solution. Anywhere from senior housing to a more robust city center where high-density housing really should be concentrated. And I feel like the council has set a really healthy precedent for establishing Highland's position on the matter. And they haven't backed down from some of these over-generic rules and regulations that apply to every city in the state, irrespective of demographics and everything that entails. And I would fight for Highland and continue to stand our ground.
This is actually something I already am working with legislative representatives and have meetings with them about this issue. So just a little background here. We have an affordable housing issue, and so our legislative body has been trying to solve that issue. And some of the things they are doing is mandating that local governments increase their high-density housing, zoning, and change it. And it is happening. It has happened. The question is it working? No, it is not. You guys can see it yourselves. We have added higher density housing into Highland. Has it been affordable? Absolutely not. I think there's different ways to do that. I think the local government should be able to decide their zoning and their land use. And I think that on the legislative side, that there are things that they can do to help with affordable housing. One of the things that I really like that they have started experimenting with and doing is the shared equity program, where essentially they are buying down equity for a first-time home buyer's house. And then when that buyer leaves, they can either pay back the equity to the state, or somebody else can come and assume that paid down equity. So that is being able to become more affordable. But when it comes to our city and our land use, I think that needs to stay local, and I think that the state should then look at other ways in order to make affordable housing actually affordable.
I'm going to allow you without taking all my time to have to repeat the question. Is that allowed? I can repeat the question. We can't hear you.
Is that allowed to have the question repeated is my question?
Yes, I will repeat
Thank
the
you.
question. And candidates, make sure that when you are speaking, you are close to the mic. Thank you. The state legislator and governor's office have recently become more involved in local land use matters as related to affordable housing and approval processes. What are your thoughts on these changes, and how would you work with our state representatives on these matters?
Thanks for repeating that. I appreciate it. Like Kim said, there certainly has to be some kind of a liaison with the state legislature. I know that Pleasant Grove City was sued over having a road fee, and the state Supreme Court allowed them to go ahead and have that road fee. Sometimes I think that the state has a tendency to overstep into cities. Honestly, I will tell you that I believe affordable housing in Highland is an oxymoron. I look at it, I'm glad that we have rental apartments for the basement to cut down on, or to help with the housing, but I think that we need to continue with the low density. I think we are almost built out as far as low density or any kind of housing goes. So I think that, of course, we always need to work with the state. I'm not saying don't work with the state, but I'm with Wes on this, that we do need to hold our ground a bit better. Thank you.
I'm not fond of the changes that we're seeing with the state being more involved in local decisions. I believe very strongly in the principle of subsidiarity, of decisions being made at the smallest, most local possible level. I think the way that we address this is we ensure that we establish relationships with our legislators, and that's something that, as a member of council, I would be committed to doing. I think that we demonstrate responsibility by being proactive about some of the things that the state is going to care about, showing that the state doesn't need to step in and do it. And at the same time, we can demonstrate responsibility with regard to subsidiarity in our own city. And in some cases decide that we don't need to be setting citywide rules for things, that we can instead allow residents to discuss among themselves and come to conclusions with their neighbors. And finally, then we need to appeal to our legislators' values and facts, because they will argue the same thing about subsidiarity with regard to the federal government. And we just need to point that out to them and appeal to the facts. Folks have discussed the facts about moderate income housing, for example. Density alone isn't going to do it. Just look at 10700 and we can see that for sure. So I think with that set of things, we really can make some progress on this issue.
Here's the thing. So I think that what we have to think about is not just the state pushing back on us with affordable housing. We need to think overall about the issues the state has become involved with. We can talk about Utah Lake, taking away our membership from the Utah Lake Commission. We can talk about water meters, which I'm sure you've all seen being installed at your homes, courtesy of the state legislature. We can talk about moderate income housing, and we can talk about elections, which the state has also tried to take a little bit of control of. So I think that we have to look at the larger issue of what should be local control versus what should be state control, and we need to push back where we can. Moderate income housing is not a one-size-fits-all solution, and there's nothing that we can do really to create affordable housing, right? I don't know what I can do as a city council member to create affordable housing. What we can do is look at what makes sense for our cities, make sure we have a place for our elderly residents to go when they no longer want their large lots, And we need to also establish and keep good relationships with our state legislators. I talk to Representative Brammer and Senator Kennedy regularly. I think that having those ongoing conversations is important so that when we try to push back, they know who we are and what it is that we're trying to do here in Highland.
John, you're up. Can you hear us?
Yes. Yeah, this issue is fascinating. I spent, prior to going for the city council spot or Tim Hall spot, I spent a long time reading all 205 pages of the general plan and really studying what the vision of Highland was. And for the most part, I agree with it. It's the very reason why I moved to Highland. When I think of the state issues and the growth, I try to look back to 2006 when I was recruiting and what even this area looked like, and what the state looked like, and what Alpine Highway and Tim Highway looked like. A lot has changed. What I get concerned about, though, is similar to what Bernie just mentioned. And that's also looking at other demographics, not just the low-income housing, but also looking at our senior population. Because of this veteran community vision that was set out, and it's a very female love, we've become fairly myopic in the type of community that we built. And so we don't have, starter homes that exist for families that love this area, that they can, gain some equity to then be able to afford more expensive houses and larger houses as time goes on. And when those larger houses are there, there's not many senior options that are there as well. So we need to get creative with those solutions. I want to work with the state to figure that out, but we haven't hit the market. I'd like to share the equity program that you mentioned. I think that's really positive. But there's more that needs to be done. There needs to be dialogue, and there needs to be creativity. And I'm here for it.
Thank you, candidates. We'll go ahead and jump to question 2. The city will shortly begin an update to Highland's general plan. What are your thoughts on the current plan and zoning, and what would your expectations be for the update, and how should Highland's undeveloped areas be used? And Kim, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Sure thing. So just for background information, the general plan essentially is the master plan for Highland. It needs to be updated. It's very old. It's supposed to be updated every 10 years. We're behind on that. And it essentially tells you what zoning is where trails are, what our city is supposed to look like. So what needs to happen is, in order to update the general plan, number one, we need the input of our residents. And we need our residents to be able to tell us what they want to see in our city. They're the ones who live here. They're the ones who are by the areas that are undeveloped. And they have a better understanding than all of us up here of really how that needs to be. Personally, for me, I really like the general plan as it is. I like how it is zoned. A lot of R140 housing. I think maybe one of the things I would change or add to it is, like John said, a little bit more senior housing. That's one thing that we are lacking here, and I could see that in possibly the Longhorn property or up in the Beacon Hills area. But other than that, we're a veteran community. Let's keep to it. Let's keep developing our parks, our trails, keep the commercial areas that are zoned in those commercial areas, and keep Highland Highland. I just really am excited to get everyone's input on what they want to see in that general plan, though.
I remembered to turn it on this time. All right. So, I would love to see more senior housing as well. The problem that we see when developers come in is they want R120. And then it becomes very unaffordable for seniors. So we need to stop and we need to really take a good look at that. I basically have three things in regards to this. It's not going to take another minute for me to explain it. We need to keep the R140 true to R140. If I'm on the council, I want to do away with the R120. I think the expectations are to keep it R140, true R140. We kind of fudge on that sometimes. I want the Longhorn, to leave the Longhorn property alone. And again, I would love to see senior housing, but only if it's affordable. And again, what I said earlier, I'm not seeing that with developers. So we have to really be careful when these developers come in and say, well, we want senior housing. We want to do it R120. It's $675,000 for a very small place that seniors generally can't afford. Thank you.
One of my biggest criticisms about the current general plan is simply that it is too long. When you look at pieces of it, it appears that somebody thought it was being graded by the word. And I think that we can make it clearer and we can make it more concise going forward. Areas of focus. One area that I would particularly like to see some additional focus on is conservation, particularly water conservation, and particularly culinary water conservation. The North Utah County Aquifer Council projects that at current rates of usage, we will run out of groundwater before we're built out in North Utah County. Conservation may not completely address that, but that's something that we need to be looking at. I would like to see plans for the vacant lot right over here included in the general plan so that we can start fundraising to put something on that lot instead of just having a weed-strewn pasture over there. And finally, one idea that I'd like to consider is in the Longhorn property, absolutely keep it R140, but look at an overlay that allows some less restrictions on alternative uses beyond strictly residential. If we do have senior housing over there, perhaps someone wants to open a small grocery on the ground floor of a house. I would be okay with that.
So just maybe a definition for those of you who don't read the general plan regularly. So when they're talking R140, R130, R120, they're talking about the size of our lots. R140 are the larger lots, those 1 acre lots that we have here in Highland a lot of. So just a little definition about that. So I love our general plan. I like what it talks about, and when you read over it, there's actually a section that encourages us in the future to update the general plan regularly and as needed, but it also asks us to respect the process and the vision and what the original founders of Highland wanted. And I think that that's an important component of the general plan. I think we need to have committees and get lots of resident feedback, really hear what residents want, but I think we also need to respect the integrity of the general plan and what Highland was planned to be for a long time now. I think we all love Longhorn Field. We would all love to see it that way forever, right? Sadly, because of property rights, we're not able to do that. So I am in favor of keeping that R140, those large lots, and keeping it as low density as we can, but recognizing that eventually it will be developed because we have property rights. So that's my kind of feeling about the general plan. I agree with you that we should be addressing water, and we also need to look closely at roads, I think.
John, you're up.
Okay, well, I just mentioned that I read the 205-page general plan. I absolutely agree with a lot of the things that have been said here. A couple things, though. The general plan, as was mentioned, was written in 2006, and I looked it up. There were 12,521 residents in Highland in 2006, and now there are over 20,000 residents in Highland. So in that amount of time, we've close to doubled in size. There are a whole new group of residents here. I am also in agreement that we need to go and look at the plan. It is not we need to just dismiss it and move on, but it absolutely needs some updating. And I'll kind of just put the elephant in the room out there. For me, when I look at the Highland Maintenance development that's being proposed, that feels to me like it is in alignment with the general plan as I have read it. And so it's been quite fascinating to see the dialogue and discussion about it. And we don't have a lot. And I don't want the town to work commercial property. is we have one gray space left, and we're all fighting over it. And if we keep doing that, the result could be fast food. And that is deeply concerning to me, and that is not the highlight that I moved to, and I don't think it's the highlight of the people that wrote the general plan.
It's so great to be running with 5 other candidates that just have amazing points of view and visions for Highland. And the general plan was the thing that first got me involved in Highland City politics and issues. And I'm with John, I love it. And not much needs to be changed, but I think plenty needs to be edited. I think one thing is including a lot of the more recent economic and market data that we have regarding our city and different directions that we're advised to take from an economic standpoint. I think that it needs to include updated vision for the design standards. In fact, it includes very little commercial design standards in the actual general plan. And I think after 13, 14 years, could use a refresher. I think that we need a Cliff's Notes version of it for residents. We do that with the budget, and I feel like a 10-page version for residents that's easy to digest would garner a lot more involvement. And I feel like we just need less build-out direction in the general plan and more maintaining and improving as we approach full build-out in the city. So lots of editing, very little changing, and I'm all for keeping Highland the way that it's laid out in the plan.
Thank you, candidates. As you may all be aware, the commercial property Highland Main's northeast of CBS and north of Quick Quack Car Wash is approved for retail and office development. The property owner, MNG Highland Development, is asking for a change to the city laws to allow restaurants in their development to sell alcoholic beverages. The city is currently tabulating the results of the resident survey, and the results will be released on November 2nd with the city council agenda. What are your thoughts on this proposal? And we'll go ahead and start with Liz.
So,
Never did that mic right. So Highland Main's is coming in whether there's liquor or not, and I'm assuming this is going to refer to the liquor as well, right? So it was planned, they brought it before the council, it was approved, and then they brought it back and they said, we can't get this approved, we can't get any renters in unless we have liquor. And so they brought it before the council again to change our laws. So, and I have a real problem with that. Highland Main's is welcome to come in. I welcome the restaurants, I welcome the businesses. I don't have a problem with that. But this afternoon I sat down and I'm just going to read you a little bit of what I wrote. No council has ever voted to allow liquor in the city except the exempted country club. The city banned beer sales years ago because the state's laws at that time, that is all that could be banned. The state, after the turn of the century, gradually changed the laws in phases that eventually allowed the current liquor by the drink. Unfortunately, the city did not update our laws banning alcohol besides beer, so they are making a false argument based on a technicality that what is not banned is permitted, even though no council has ever voted for liquor sales. Fortunately, a previous council did ban all liquor sales in the zone where Highland Main's project is being developed. Okay, so I welcome them, I don't welcome the liquor.
With regard to the alcohol sales, my opinion is that this is a community values issue and not a policy issue. If it were a policy issue, I might talk about public safety, I might talk about traffic, I might talk about sales tax revenue, I might talk about moral values, I might talk about the fact that I submitted my survey in favor of on-prem alcohol sales. But I don't believe that in this case, my personal opinion matters all that much. And there are moral values on both sides of this that are leading people to different decisions. And I don't think we should be making a decision based on a small percentage of, fraction of a percent of our general fund revenues and sales tax. And none of us know what the real difference in traffic is going to be between the two designs. The great work that Wes did, putting together some public safety figures, convinces me that there's no statistically significant difference in public safety. I view this as a community values issue. And what's critical to talk about then is the results that we're going to get in a week. Those are going to tell us what Highland residents currently value, and that is what's going to drive my decision on this issue.
So the default needs to be status quo. What we've had in Highland for 50 years should be status quo until we have a really good reason to make a change. Now, I think the real question that we need to be asking is not about alcohol, it's about how do we want our city council to be making decisions. And I'll tell you what, I was thinking, I bet I have made close to 400 decisions as a member of the city council. And I've had a lot of people say to me recently that this is not a democracy, it's a representative republic, and you should be voting what you think should happen. That is totally correct, but I'll tell you what, I will make this decision the same way that I have made all 400 other decisions on the city council, which is by doing my research, asking people that are affected, consulting with experts, and then putting all of that information together to make the best possible decision. And that is how decisions should be made at the city council. We should not ever be trying to limit public input or assuming that we know what's best. So in this situation, I haven't known what the residents were thinking, and I do think it was the right thing to do to send out a survey, get the information, and then ultimately the city council will be making that decision and will be accountable for it, and I welcome that. But I certainly want the input beforehand.
John, you're up.
Yeah, gosh, this is it's a tricky and sensitive subject, I think, but I would love the dialogue that I would have with both the residents of Highland, but also with the city council, and with the developer and others. I agree with you. I think that as an elected official person there on city council, that is absolutely our job, right? To do research, to consult with experts, and ultimately to talk to residents. We can't survey for every issue, and this was an issue that I agree the survey's been great. I think that, sure, it's been a little intense at times, but we're going to get to the bottom of that. And I think ultimately I could make a decision fully without that information at this juncture, but just because a minute and a half is probably not enough time to talk through this, I encourage everyone to go to my social media channels on Facebook and on Instagram. I posted a 10-minute video talking about the subject, and so you'll be able to hear more of my logic, my reasoning behind it. The thing that I think has, Doug talked about kind of our city values. That is what is really important to me, and I just really do not love the message that it sends to those people in our city that do drink alcohol and do want to have restaurants that have alcohol. We're sending a message that says we don't want you here, and that's never the message I want to send as a city council member.
I want to thank everyone for such a diversity of thought and approach to this. I feel like my approach mirrors a lot of the other candidates and includes one other important element. For me, I approach this topic with regards to what is best for Highland's future, long-term future. I'm trying to picture a Highland in 20, 25 years. And I talk to residents a lot about what does that look like for you? And I want to take that vision and I want to start making decisions now to get us there. And this development is going to be crucial to which way Highland goes. And that is probably what is guiding my position on the issue more than anything. If you're looking at the data, it won't make Highland any less safe. If you're looking at the economic impact right now, it's good, but it isn't like the crux of the issue. And I feel like Highland needs to be a place where we love living, but we love dining. We love shopping. We love spending time with our friends and our neighbors and our family in communal areas. And if you look at the general plan and the design standards for the city, the Highland Mains project matches it to a T. This has always been part of Highland's vision.
I suspect all of you guys are here because you really want to know how we think. One thing about me is I'm Kim Rodella. I tell it how it is. I don't sit on the fence either side of, well, I can see this, I can see this. I just tell you what I think. And that's what I've done in this process. In order to get to that point, though, I do a ton of research. And I will say this, I am the candidate that has done the most research on this. Alcoholism runs in my family. I remember picking up my brother at the police station after getting a DUI, and he eventually succumbed to it. So this is something that really hits hard at me, and that's why I wanted to make sure that I had all the facts, all the data in place before I took an opinion on this. I talked to our police chief about this. Any public safety issues? No. I looked at data about Highland DUIs versus surrounding cities. We actually have more than our surrounding cities. I talked to the head doctor of the ER unit at AF, head doctor at the ICU. They said we should actually focus on the real issues, which is mental health and opioid addiction. I've attended every single cottage meeting out there. I've replied to every single, almost, email, not with curt replies, but actually genuine replies. From all my data and research I have conducted and looked into, the general plan and traffic situations, taking it to other city planners, I think it is a net positive to allow this amendment to change versus a net negative. With that said, I'm missing a puzzle in my data and research, and that's the survey. So I'm really excited to be able to get that back.
Thank you, candidates. The next question is, when making a decision as a city council member, you'll need to balance resident input, information provided by the staff, your personal opinions, and then the greater public interest. How will you consider and weigh this information when making your decision? And we'll start with Brittany.
I wasn't keeping track, it was my time. First, I'm just going to take a second to respond to something that another candidate said. I don't think that if you are opposed to this development, it means that you value a certain group of people less. I don't think this is a religious argument for a lot of people. I think it can just be about what you want for Highland. And at the same way, I don't think that people who are in favor because they just want to have a drink. So I think it is important that we all look at each other, understand that we all have different motivations and opinions and ideas, and none are more or less valuable than the others. That being said, the question was about how we weigh input. So I think it's really important to not always listen to the squeakiest wheel or whoever's in the room. I think it's important to look at the community as a whole. That being said, there are definitely some issues where I have contacted some neighborhoods because a road issue or a development issue affects them more than it might some others. So I think it really depends on the type of issue, whether you are going to look for broad public opinion, or if you're going to look for that more specific opinion. And I respond to every email just like him, not about this alcohol issue, but I will respond to every email that I get, and I'm always available for that.
Hey, Sarah, excuse me for interrupting, but wasn't it Doug's turn to start? Is that?
We'll come back to the question, I'm guessing.
Did I miss you, Doug, on that last one? Who started that one? Was that?
Yeah, although we have one more question, so we can just start the next one with me.
Right. I apologize on that.
No worries.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention, Liz. I appreciate that.
Let's go to John.
Are you there?
Yep, we can hear you.
Whoever had said, hey, Sarah serving me on my computer freaked out, so I'm not yeah, so the discussion on this one is resident input, staff input, how do you weigh it all out? And I am taking a crash course on that right now and learning that process. And I really think the Highland Mains issue has been the biggest one for me to be able to dive into. When I was submitting my name for this city council spot that I hold currently, I went and I looked for residents that I knew or had association with in all different corners of Highland, different demographics, different neighborhoods, different age groups. I had people that wrote letters of recommendation for me that had been in the city for 30 years, and people that had been here for 1 year. Again, I mentioned the statistic of the number of people that lived here in 2006. There were 12,000 people back then, now there's 20,000 plus. The community is growing, it is changing, and I want to make sure that those voices are heard. So I think that input from residents is of the utmost importance, but I'm so impressed with the Highland City staff. Aaron on that is just fantastic, and the rest of the team is just terrific. We really live in a wonderful community with incredible people. I trust them immensely. So it is, it's a combination of the two, and I agree with Brittany. I think that, you know, there are issues that affect certain groups different than others, and I think you have to weigh that out pretty lightly. You got to get a whole picture of making your decision.
Yeah, making these kinds of decisions can get really tricky. What do you weigh more than, you know, other factors? You know, there's the residents' input. There's what does policy and ordinances dictate? What does city code dictate? What do city staff and, you know, legal dictate? And what does that cocktail, no pun intended, what does that cocktail look like for, you know, this decision or that decision or that decision? And I'm betraying my stance on it a little too much, I guess. And I value the residents' input so much, which is why I try to speak to as many people, interact with as many people as possible. Part of that is coming to all of these meetings. Part of that is engagement online. Part of it is just being out on the streets in my neighborhoods. And I'm not alone in having talked to so many people. The problem, you run into the problem of misinformation, misunderstanding, and misapplication of Highland City's code and general plan. And I think that's where, as decision makers and elected decision makers, council needs to lean into their own expertise, city staff, policy, ordinances, to make these decisions that they were elected to make. Government shouldn't be dictating our housing policy and our water usage, and I don't think they should be dictating who can sell and buy alcohol either, and that's the city council's job.
Okay, when making decisions, how do I think? Well, I'll be honest, number one, I look at the packet that I receive and I go down to what is staff's recommendation. Because to be honest, our staff is amazing. We have a city engineer who has a background in exactly what he needs to know and exactly how it needs to be. We have a city planner who has a background in planning. We have our city administrator who has a public administration background, years of experience in this. So I rely heavily on staff when it comes to decisions because they're the ones with the experience. They know how it works. Number two, one thing that I always ask myself when I need to make a decision is, how does it affect Highland overall? Sometimes I take off my city planning hat and I put my city council hat and put on my planning hat. I'm on the state planning and coordination team. And I think, how is this decision going to affect our city in 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now? I can think of one instance where there's a development going on in my neighborhood and there had to be a road access out of it that would basically put more traffic on the road right next to my house and my neighbor's house. Not happy about it whatsoever, and I wanted to vote against it. But I knew also it had to be there. It was in the general plan. You need 2 access routes out of a neighborhood, and it was the best overall decision for Highland. Am I still not happy about it? No. But 10, 20, 50 years from now, it was the best decision.
So making decisions, and how do I come to those conclusions? I talked to a lot of people. It's really been amazing on this journey to go from house to house. I've probably talked to about 300 of you. I know that's a very small amount of people in Highland, but you have amazing ideas and you're really sharp people. But I do talk to a lot of people before I make a decision. I also ask myself, am I being impartial? Am I favoring somebody maybe I shouldn't favor? Am I doing what is best for the city? That being said, I'm a traditionalist. I'm an originalist. I've lived here for 25 years. When I moved here, Highland was 9,000 people. And now we're very, very large. But I don't want to leave the traditional Highland behind. I want to keep it Highland. And we need to make sure that we are working for the people of Highland, not for a developer, not because it might benefit their pockets. Thank you.
Well, in some respects, I kind of view this as a trick question. That the question that was asked was, how do we value residents' opinions, staff input, the public interest, and our own opinions in coming to decisions? And to me, the clear answer to that is that the public interest is what we're aiming to identify. And so we take input from residents, understand what residents are thinking about things. We take staff input to form our opinions about what is in the public interest. And once we do that, we've got the answer. Except we've only got part of the answer. Because as in the example that Kim gave with the neighborhood, the additional traffic on her streets, sometimes what's in the public interest harms some subset of residents. Generally, that's traffic. So once we've decided what's in the best interests, we need to figure out how we can best mitigate those negative aspects that we may be causing for some of the residents in search of what is best for the city today, tomorrow, and into the future.
Mea culpa. I apologize, Doug. We did skip you on that question, so I hope this is not going to throw you off because we're going to be asking you. You'll answer this one first,
Yep,
and then work our way
absolutely.
around. So I apologize.
I would really like to
Candace.
answer the last one first, but that's okay.
Okay. Here's the next question. Thank you for your patience. Highland City has experienced several cases where residents have encroached on adjacent city property, and some of these encroachments include permanent structures and others are landscaping. The City Council has started working with residents to come to a resolution with these encroachments. Do you agree with the policy which has been adopted regarding encroachment? What would you do, or sorry, would you do anything differently? Doug?
I do agree with the policy that's been adopted with regard to encroachments. I think that you don't expect your neighbors to build things on your property, and likewise, we should expect that residents are not building things on city property. The one difference or caveat that I would give is that there have been times where we've taken a look and decided that a certain property is surplus, we don't need it. There is, in fact, on the 7th, a public hearing about surplusing some property. And I think that we should be sure that we are taking a look at areas where the encroachment has happened to ensure that there are places that we really need as a city. If it's something that we would be willing to sell off had the encroachment not been there, then we should still be willing to sell it off with the encroachment in place. But barring that, absolutely, we have to make sure that we have access to our property and that it's in a state that we can use it for its intended purpose.
Is it me? This is a tricky question about whether or not I agree with the policy because I mostly wrote the policy, so I think I need to agree with it. And I mostly do. Here's what I think. So the city council is not only a steward of taxpayer dollars and like money, but we're a steward of taxpayer property and other resources as well. And I think that it's important for us to protect that. We've got a lot of places all over the city where people have taken their landscaping or their backyard or permanent structures onto city property. And while we've looked at those and talked about what we can sell and what we need to keep, I think we need to be so careful about what we sell. And we have learned that the hard way over the years, that we need to make sure we're not going to need it for a trail, for any kind of an easement. We've got to be super careful about that. I think the other thing we have to understand is that these encroachments affect all of us. We have lots of instances where people have landscaped and it's beautiful and it definitely looks better for the city, but these are areas that we had never planned to take care of. We had never planned for the water. The pipes that go there, we don't have the water as a city, and so as a steward of our money and our property and our water and our resources, we have to continue to follow the policy and make sure everybody is playing by the same rules.
John.
Water is a big issue. This last year, we had major flooding issues, and when you need water to go to certain parts of the land that the city owns to keep all of us safe and everyone safe, it can be a big challenge when there are encroachment issues that exist because somebody decided they wanted a pool or a play structure or whatever the case may be. I also get a little bit concerned when the city does try to work with these residents and they're non-communicative, and that can be a challenge too. So this is a major issue. It's something that needs to be discussed, but I think from everything that I've seen with the policy that's there, the plan that's been in place, I have full faith and trust and confidence in the city and the team that did put it together. It's a monumental issue and definitely something that I'm on board to help with in the next 4 years of my budget.
Everything I have learned over the last few years on this issue, I've pretty much learned from Brittany and Kim and Doug. Doug's like a walking city code encyclopedia. He's really brilliant. And so I lean heavily into their thoughts and opinions on this. One luxury that I have when I come to city council and planning commission meetings is I get to sit in the back and I have plenty of time to think about creative solutions to some of the issues and some of the problems that the city has. And it's kind of like a little game that I like to play with myself, like coming up with just the most off-the-wall kinds of solutions. And one thing with this issue of encroachment that I've seen that I think could really be explored a little more is just actual dialogue and communication and building relationships with the residents that are encroaching in one way or another on the public land, even if it takes putting up a cot on their front porch and wait until they get home and answer the door. We're friends and neighbors, and it's a small city, and I just don't see any possibility where that approach wouldn't be effective.
I hope I agree on this policy because, first of all, anything that Brittany helps to write, I will pass. You know, we put a lot of work. That you write, Brittany. That you write. We put a lot of work into this. You know, Brittany and I borrowed the chief's four-wheeler and we drove around every single trail. I won't say what fence we crashed into, but we did drive around every single trail in Highland, looking at all the open space, checking out the encroachment, to really get a grasp of the situation and what needed to change. And it really came down to communication and guidance. I think we did a somewhat good job of assessing what property the city had that had zero value to Highland and could be sold. And then from there, we reallocated funds to be able to maintain the open space that we do have. When it comes to encroaching, there needs to be guidelines on there with maintenance agreements. You know, some of our city residents do a great job of maintaining the city's open space when we can't do it, but water conservation has to take effect as well when they do that. And then, you know, building structures on there, it is city property. And there are reasons why it has value to us. A lot of times people don't understand the infrastructure underneath and why we can't have trampolines and giant pirate ships built upon the property.
Am I just allowed to ditto what Brittany said? Can I just, no, really, I mean, policies always have unintended consequences. And I think when we write policy, when I was on the planning commission or help write a city ordinance, you have to remember that it does have unintended consequences. But having a permanent structure is probably not appropriate. And it is very difficult as a planning commissioner, I'm sure as a city council person, when you have to say you have to tear it down. American Fork City went through a similar situation many years ago. If you've ever noticed somebody's front yard is part of the AF cemetery. Yeah, they built some kind of a structure to wash either horses, a horse bay or a truck bay, and it got ripped down by the city and they took the property. So people need to remember that when they encroach, that there always are, those consequences for them as well, and it just shouldn't happen. Brittany brought up a really good point about, even just having grass. We don't have the water to keep, watering everything type of thing. So that's it. Thank you.
John, you will be the next one to start out the answer to this question. What is your greatest concern about Highland that needs to be addressed immediately, and what is your solution?
The greatest concern that needs to be addressed immediately. I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I guess probably the most immediate thing is the Highland Mains issue with commercial property with the events that needs to be addressed for the zoning issues. That one is a deal that has to, yes, and we need to do the survey. We have all the survey results back, we're compiling it. We're going to get information out there on November 2nd. And it's a multifaceted issue. I think when you look at the frustration of the residents, but also the frustration of the developer, it's created kind of a big issue. So I think that's the most urgent thing that needs to be addressed. Once we have that final piece, which is the results of that survey, kind of to a lot of discussion on some of these questions. How do we get the input from the residents and the information to get it from the staff, and then study what the zoning says and the general plan? We'll finally have that piece of the puzzle so we can make that decision. And I would hope that anyone that is elected or people that are on the council can make that decision. I'm prepared to make it as soon as we get that information. And I'm looking forward to that, and that would probably be the most urgent.
I'm going to avoid the temptation to go back to Highland Mains, but I think that it is relevant in that, for a while I've been trying to project forward, 20, 25 years. What kind of Highland do I see? Do we see? Do we want? And do we need? And I think a couple decisions coming up for the city. One, the Longhorn property. I think that is an opportunity to create a healing situation for the city. There's some fracturing, there's some fissures that are kind of happening over this whole issue, and that's my main concern over it. And I think that's a great opportunity to do some bridge building. And I think, just to use a broad term, but water issues in the city are going to be a sneaky important issue over the next couple decades in Highland. One of the most fascinating things for me years ago when I first started getting involved in city issues was water rights and where our wells are and where all the water comes from and where it goes. And I would bore my wife to death after council meetings because of all the interesting water facts that I learned. But it's going to be a really vital thing that we're going to need to take a hard look at just to ensure a prosperous future for the city and every other area.
Well, one of the biggest issues and concerns that Highland has been faced with and that Brittany and I solved was the lack of Christmas lights. There are now Christmas lights in Highland City. I just want to make you aware of that. It's at Heritage Park, and that is because of Brittany and I. But I think the one issue that, concerns me the most and is something that needs to be solved is the foundation, the crux of the issues that we have, and that's communication and transparency. I think so many times people get really riled up about decisions that were made or things that have come before council, and it really is just lack of transparency. It's lack of communication to the public, of being able to get that information across that we need to. When it comes down to it, once we talk to residents and explain why we made decisions the way we did, or we are able to clarify any miscommunications, really at the end of the day, residents kind of walk away and say, oh, I get it. I understand why you did that decision and why that had to be the way it is. So that's something I've worked really hard on as a council. I found a resolution and ordinance back in 1995, was it, to end city council meetings at 10 p.m. so that every single person can attend a council meeting and understand what's going on before they go to bed at night.
I don't know if I can put my finger on just one greatest concern, but I believe the greatest concern we have is keeping our density low and keeping an R140. Keeping this a true bedroom community. That's what our general plan says. That's what our goals are. And, over on the Reinhardt property, which is actually just a couple of blocks from me, you know what that is, there were 69 homes that went in there. And that was designated R140, but of course there's some little pieces of land left over, and for one house it took 3 lots to purchase, and those lots didn't go for anything out there, $670,000. So keeping a true R140 would be really one of my goals. And business, I don't want you to think that I'm not business oriented or we don't need businesses. But I think that businesses can be very successful without having liquor. I really do. They're welcome here. I welcome restaurants. I don't think we need the liquor issue even involved. Thank you.
Instead of the one most urgent issue, I'm going to talk about 2 most unexpectedly urgent issues. I already mentioned the concern about culinary water earlier. And I think that is certainly one of the 2 that fall onto the list. Because if we start encouraging and educating about some easy conservation approaches that we can take with our culinary water now, while we still have some runway, then we're in much better shape as we get close to that running out of our aquifers. The other one is infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure in particular. In about 30 years, the first subdivisions that were built after the city was incorporated, their sewer and water infrastructure will be reaching the end of its expected lifespan. And at that point, it just sort of rolls through the rest of the city. As far as I can tell, I've spoken with Andy about the city engineer about it. As far as I can tell, we don't have a plan for addressing this, and we don't have a good estimate of how much it's going to cost. I think we need to do both of those things. And in the meantime, I recommend that we start setting aside 3% of those enterprise funds, the revenue that we get each year, to start getting ready and preparing for what we know there are guaranteed costs coming down the road.
So just to be clear, because I see that we have Chief Patton in the room, Kim was driving that day when we did the tour. You were driving. But I think this is actually a fairly simple question. What is the most important issue that's facing us immediately? And I think that it is safety and roads. We have had so many neighborhoods and residents come and talk to us in the last year about traffic in their neighborhoods. People driving too fast, the increased traffic. Kim and I have gone to lots of neighborhoods together to talk to those residents about their traffic concerns. And in some of those neighborhoods, we have made promises about things that we will do to address the traffic safety. And I think that we need to follow through with those promises. We need to look at our residents, look at our neighborhoods, and see what we can do to make those streets safer for our kids. We had a traffic calming study recently done where it gave us a lot of really great ideas of things that we can do to make our neighborhood safer. Some of those ideas are super simple, as small as paving a road or striping a road differently. I think we need to be creative, look at those solutions, do some of the ones that are maybe a little bit less expensive to begin with, allow our residents to have input and even fund some of those improvements in their neighborhoods if they want to. But it's a thing that we hear about every single council meeting, and I think it's something that we need to address sooner rather than later.
Thank you, candidates. Our question period is over, but we would like to hear some concluding remarks from each of you. Maybe things that you would like to leave with the public and give them a reason of why they should be voting for you. And Brittany, we're going to go ahead and start with you and end with John.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everybody for coming. And I neglected to shout out earlier to our awesome youth council. They have done such a great job, and we appreciate their support and them coming. I just really appreciate the conversation that we have tonight. All 5 of these other people who are sitting up here, and John, who is sitting there. I mean, they're fantastic people, and we're so lucky to have them involved in our city. Wes and I have become unexpectedly good friends over the last 10 years, sharing treats in the back of the city council meeting. Liz had brought some fresh new ideas that I love. Doug is always our walking encyclopedia. I can always ask him a question, and it's been super great to know John. He's so enthusiastic and involved. And you know, Kim and I we've been doing this for a while, and we certainly haven't agreed every time. But we have super great candidates here, and I mean, I think that that's really important to know. I want you to know that I am a strong proponent of local government, and that is what I will fight for. I think we need to make decisions for our city. I'm very invested in transparency and openness and good communication, and that is what I will continue to bring to the council if I could please ask you to support me for another 4 years. Thank you.
I know that some of you are concerned that I was endorsed by Equality Utah, and I'd like to address that. I'm not embarrassed by the endorsement. It's a good organization that has done a lot of important work over the years. What I am is surprised. The only policy question they asked me was whether or not I thought and whether or not I would support holding a city-hosted Pride event in the city. I told them that I thought that sounded like a big thing and an expensive thing and something that we shouldn't really be doing in Highland. And then they asked me about my background and how I would accomplish things on the city council and how I handle disagreements. And my answer to all those ultimately came back to our Highland values. Because we value our neighbors, and we value cooperation, and we even value disagreement. because that allows us to come together and arrive at a better decision at the end. So if this is something that you're concerned about, I assure you, I have no hidden agenda. My agenda is for the city and the people of Highland. If I'm elected, I can promise you that every single decision I make will be based only on what is best for Highland, and that I will use our shared values to guide me in that decision.
I want to thank you.
I want to make sure that you each know that I really thank you for your time here tonight. And for staff, I know they worked really hard, and I'm just going to get right to it. I hope you'll watch for my mailer. There were 3 candidates. After Tim Ball had to drop out, there were 3 candidates left. And I wanted to make this an election and not a coronation. So I entered as a write-in candidate. And as you know, write-in candidates are at a bit of a disadvantage. So while I'm asking for your vote, you have to write my name in. But there are a lot of things that we need to address. You already know that I'm really opposed to the liquor in Highland. I am not opposed to the businesses. I am not opposed to Highland Mains. I welcome them in. I hope they have great success there. I also want you to know that I do have some concerns about the traffic and the safety of Highland. That's, certainly not low on the list. But I also respect what the Highland founders did in 1977. We've been here since 1875. And what they did in 1977, I don't think we should brush that off. I don't think that the city council, like I said before, the city council is to represent the people. We are not to represent a developer. We're to work with them, but we're not to represent them. Please vote for me. Watch for my mailer. It should be in with your ballot. The same day you get your ballot, rather. It won't be with your ballot. But the same day you get your ballot, my mailer will be there. And I also have some flyers at the back.
I've been on the City Council for 4 years now, and I just want to go over a few of my accomplishments that I've done and what I hope to accomplish in the next 4 years as well. One of them is Mountain Ridge Park. When I got on at the council, the design was a toddler park with soccer fields and a few pickleball courts. And I looked at it, and as mom of 4 kids, I said, that's not good enough for Highland. I want a place where my entire family can go. My teenager down to my 6-year-old, where we can gather and everyone can have a good time. And so I worked with the staff, with council, with my kids to redesign that park to allow everyone in our city to be able to use that park, whether you had disabilities, whether you were 16 years old, 2 years old, 65 years old, and that's something I'm really excited about. I helped to fundraise for that park, and I'm just gonna put a little plug in. We're getting close to having it finished. We're a little short 1.5 million, so if anyone wants to donate to Mountain Ridge Park, please come and talk to us. Your name will be engraved on there for generations to come. Another thing is the traffic calming toolbox. Like Brittany said, traffic is an issue, and this is something we created to be able to prioritize what needs to be taken care of. And so the next 4 years, we're going to go through those and be able to figure out how we can make our city safer as well. One last thing, I've really focused on being fiscally reactive, fiscally proactive instead of reactive with our budget as well. So I'm excited to continue serving the next 4 years in Highland.
I feel like I've done about as much as I can as just regular Joe citizen. All the meetings and the after-hour emails and texts and the boards and the commissions and the volunteering and stuff. And serving on the council is just, I feel like the next step for me. My hidden agenda is that I just really, really, really love it here. And I love my neighbors and my community, and I feel like I've been so welcomed in when I don't look and necessarily live like 99% of Highland. And I really have the city and its residents at heart. I think it's for that reason. If you drive in the streets, you're not going to see any posters with my name on it or any campaign materials or any mailers. And I would like to endorse Brittany and Kim and Doug as 3 candidates that you should seriously consider for Highland City Council. I feel like I'm very qualified for this position. I feel like they might be more qualified than me, and I really care about this city a lot. And I'll be back in a couple years to run for City Council, but that's who I'm going to be voting for this year.
All right, my turn?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, John.
Great. This has been just such a great dialogue and discussion. I want to echo the words of everyone that is there. I wish I could have been there in person. I have a deep respect for the current council, and I love diving in and getting to know all of them, working with them in just a short period of time. I want to continue the good things going. I love Highland as well. I feel like the reason why I decided to jump in is not because I'm a election candidate at all. I am deeply committed to the city and the city issues that are there. I feel like I can bring my entrepreneurial spirit to the table with creative problem solving and thinking, to be able to dialogue and build bridges between different groups. I definitely look at the booming population that has existed since 2006 on that general plan. I think that this next 4-year cycle is when that general plan is going to be revised. And I want to be an active part of that process and help, get the feedback from the residents and say, well, where did we come from? Why are we here now? Where are we going in the future? Like, how can we make this happen? And I think we use a lot of creativity through that process in that council. Like, we can preserve the past and everything that makes Highland so great today. We can also make it an incredible future. We shouldn't fear the future. We should jump in with full feet. And I'm really excited to be my part of what we'll go right in on this election. Appreciate it so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you, candidates. What a great night. We appreciate your civility and coming and sharing your opinions and your thoughts this evening with the public and letting them know about the important issues that are facing Highland today and where you stand with that. Our audience also needs to be commended for coming out this evening and getting involved in these local election process. I think that's important to show our youth that that's what you do to make changes. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time back over to our Highland youth.
I'd like to thank Sarah Beeson for being our moderator today. And I'd also like to thank you candidates for speaking with us today and for debating. And lastly, I'd like to thank the residents here for taking your time out of the day to come and listen to all of these people debate about these city topics. I'd like to excuse the candidates to go to their tables so that they can visit with the residents, and then I'm going to announce the election information. Election day is Tuesday, November 21st of 2023. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's my bad. Election day is Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. Watch for your ballots to come in the mail starting October 31st. Ballots can be dropped in any Utah County ballot drop box starting October 31st through November 21st at 8 o'clock p.m. Mailed ballots must be postmarked no later than Monday, November 20th. There will be a vote center at Highland City Hall on Election Day. The vote center will be open from 7 o'clock a.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. Tonight's debate will be available on Highland City's YouTube channel. Residents may visit with the candidates in the lobby tonight until 9 o'clock p.m.